All right, have you ever wanted to build those really slick, dynamic web components? You know, the ones that react to your users, but do it without writing a single line of JavaScript? I know, it sounds kind of impossible, right? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and show you exactly how to create some seriously powerful, interactive UI using nothing but the magic of CSS. Okay, let's just dive right in. Take a look at this drop-down menu, or this really clean pagination bar. Now, your first thought is probably that there's some complex script running in the background making all that happen. But what if I told you that everything you're seeing, all the hover effects, the content popping up, the state changes, it's all being handled by pure CSS? And this isn't just a neat trick. It actually means faster, lighter web pages. So that's the big question we're going to answer today. So here's our game plan. First, we'll uncover the secret sauce that makes CSS so reactive. Then, we'll look at the specific tools for styling elements in all their different states. After that, we'll get our hands dirty and actually build two real-world examples, an interactive menu and a pagination bar. And finally, we'll wrap it all up into a new toolkit you can start using immediately. So, how in the world does CSS know what a user is doing? Well, the answer is a super powerful feature called pseudo-selectors. Just think of these as special keywords that let you style elements based not just on what they are, but on what they're doing in any given moment. Okay, so we know about pseudo-selectors, but let's actually see how they work. This next part is all about the foundational tools that make our CSS truly responsive. We're going to explore what we call states, like when a user is hovering over something, or clicking it, or maybe has already visited a link. The main tool we're going to be using is something called a pseudo class, and really all it is a keyword you tack onto a selector to target a special state of that element. A great way to think about it is like a mood ring for your HTML. The element itself doesn't actually change, but its appearance does, all based on how the user is interacting with it. Pretty cool, right? Now, it's really, really important not to get pseudo classes mixed up with their close cousins, pseudo elements. The difference is actually pretty simple. A pseudo-class is all about the element's state, like hover. A pseudo-element, on the other hand, lets you style a specific part of an element that isn't even in the HTML, like using dash first letter to get that fancy drop cap on a paragraph, or dash before to add a little decorative icon. So let's look at some of the most common pseudo-classes you'll be using all the time. You've probably seen link and visited for styling hyperlinks. The real workhorse here, though, is hover. This is the one that creates that instant feedback when a user's cursor glides over an element. Then you've got active, which gives you that split-second style change while a button is actively being clicked. And last but not least, the incredibly useful .not pseudo-class, which lets you exclude something from a style rule. We'll see just how powerful that one is in a minute. And then there's this one, nth child. This selector is just fantastic for anything in a list or a table. It lets you select elements based on their position using some simple formulas. You can grab all the odd or even items to create those nice striped tables, or even select, say, every third item. It gives you some amazing control over repeating elements. All right, that's enough theory. Let's put this stuff into practice and build something useful. We're going to start with one of the most common UI components you see everywhere, a drop-down menu. The HTML for this is surprisingly simple. All we need is a main container. Let's call it our drop-down div. Inside of that, we put the button the user will actually hover over. And then right after it, we add another div that holds all of our hidden ranks. This parent-child structure is absolutely the key to making this whole thing work. Now for the CSS. First, we make the button look good. Then we set the hidden contents position to absolute. And this is super important because it yanks the menu out of the normal flow of the page. So when it shows up, it won't shove all your other content down. And then the most crucial part, we hide it completely with display none. And here it is. This one single line of code is the entire trick. Seriously. Let's break it down, because this is where the magic happens. The first part, .dropdown hover, tells the browser, hey, when the user's mouse is hovering over that main drop-down container, then that little space and .content says, go find the content element that's inside of it. And what do we do then? We just switch its display back to block, and poof, it's visible. That's literally it. It's so elegant, so simple, and just unbelievably effective. Okay, that drop-down was a great start. But let's build on what we've learned and tackle another essential UI pattern, a pagination bar. This is going to show us how to combine pseudo-classes for even smarter interactions. And once again, the HTML is really straightforward. It's basically just a container div that's holding a list of hyperlink tags. a few for the page numbers, and a couple for those next and previous arrows. At its heart, it's just a styled list of links. So how do we show which page the user is actually on? We can't really use a pseudo class for this, right? Because it's a permanent state, not a temporary thing like a hover. The solution is just a simple CSS class, something like .active. You just add this class right into the HTML on the link for the current page, and that lets you give it a unique style, like a different background color or bold text. Okay, and this right here, this is a brilliant example of how powerful combining selectors can be. Think about it. We want a hover effect on the page numbers, right? But it would look kind of weird if the active page, the one you're already on, also changed when you hovered over it. So by chaining hover with not.active, we're basically telling the browser, look, apply this hover style to any link unless it also has that active class. It's a tiny detail, for sure, but it's what makes the whole thing feel so much more polished and professional. So we've gone through the concepts and we've built 2 fully working components. Let's just take a step back and organize everything we've learned into a powerful toolkit that you can go and use right away. All right, let's recap our new CSS toolkit. We learned that the hover pseudo class is perfect for temporarily showing hidden content, just like in our drop-down menu. For states that are more permanent, like a selected page, a simple .active class is the way to go. And we saw how we can get really clever by combining selectors, like hover not active, to create much more refined user interactions. And hey, even though we didn't use them today, don't forget you also have pseudo elements like .before and .after for adding cool decorative touches without cluttering up your HTML. You know, the biggest takeaway here is that CSS is so much more than just a styling language. It can actually listen and react to what your users are doing, letting you build these clean, lightweight, and really high-performing components. You can make tooltips, accordions, all sorts of interactive stuff without the overhead of JavaScript. So the only question left is, what are you going to create first?